Hey, and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So we had an update to the previous server 2 days ago, and this will be coming with Module 28. It's got some changes that you probably want to take note of. We have got some rogue buffs, some ranger buffs, both on Hunter and Warden, and most notably, yes, the Slab of Vecna Mount has finally been fixed. It has been 8 months since this mount was released, and day one of its release, I tested it and we found out that it was dealing, like 90% more damage than it should. And that is because it was double dipping with your combat advantage stat. It was benefiting from it twice. It just clearly made it best in slot, and there was nothing else that could compete with it, and so needed to get fixed. So it has gone and gotten fixed. It's going to work properly at 2400 magnitude, scaling with your stats, so you can go and compare it versus other abilities like the Giant Toad Tongue Lash, Golden Touch, Tunnel Vision, and your Big B's Hand, which all add up to 3000 magnitude damage hits. The Slab of Vecna has 2400 magnitude, but it has a buff that it gives you of 15% extra damage for 10 seconds. And so in its fixed state, working as intended, it is still pretty balanced compared to these other abilities, as long as you can make use of that 15% damage buff. And I'll say not all classes can, and if you just want something nice and reliable, I would recommend switching back to your original mounts, like Golden Touch, the Toad, Big B, and Tunnel Vision. Just keep in mind which ones are physical, which ones are magical. Big B's physical, the rest are magical, with Vecna being physical. And so what this means in a mathematical sense, if you want to be going min-maxing, well, since the Vecna buff of 15% damage is only going to result in about 9% because of other damage buffs and it's stacking with it, you would have to deal over 5000 magnitude after you cast the Vecna mount in order for it to compete with just a 3000 magnitude mount power. Which means you would have to cast Vecna pretty early on in an artifact call in order to make use of that. And it would depend on class whether that's feasible or not. With it being fixed also means that if you're a Cleric Arbiter or a Rogue Whisper Knife, you can take advantage of your Prophecy of Doom and your Shadow of Demise actually getting boosted its damage via this Slab of Vecna. So you can use it and then gaining the additional damage buff for all your other damage, and then that feeding into your, say, Shadow of Demise and Prophecy of Doom. So again, that might be worth it there. However, there is one bug with the Slab of Vecna right now, and hopefully they'll get that fixed before this goes live, is the fact that this mount power, the damage is not affected by Minsk, and not properly at least. It doesn't gain the full damage, and it's not affected by Batiri, meaning it loses a lot of damage through that, meaning, it's not really competitive versus the others in that state. Brett Norton did go and tell us that, there has been a technical change on our end, because we did find it out beforehand, and he just came out to confirm that yes, it's been changed. I did go and report my findings that the damage is a bit bugged, that it's not gaining a boost from these damage bonuses. Now moving on, we did get some changes to Rogue, some buffs in fact. We can see right here that Blade Flurry got a 30 magnitude increase. Path of the Blade got a 20 magnitude increase on each of its hits, and Smoke Bomb also got that on each of its hits. With regards to Assassin, the Hastily Sharpened Blade feat will now more reliably give you critical strike. So 5% at base, up to a maximum of 10%. Then with the Whisper Knife, they have adjusted the one with the Shadows feat so that it will more reliably give you the stealth effect after you have cast an encounter power. It was sometimes a bit bugged, and it might give you it before you have cast the encounter power, leading to issues in rotations. And then the Shadow of Demise feat, it's a pretty decent buff to Whisper Knife single target damage, has been buffed to 50%. That's the tooltip right there. I will showcase some rotations and setups that you can use to make the most of that. Again, we will compare against Assassin, because Assassin also did get fixed its toxic blades. It will no longer work to stack with smoke bomb like it did before over the cap of 5 stacks. So you won't be able to abuse that anymore to get some crazy like multi-target damage along with single target damage. Again, you're just limited with 5 stacks. So yes, Assassin's performance will definitely be going down with module 28. You may very well want to look towards Whisper Knife more so, and I will cover more single target orientated builds with that. So moving on from here, we have some Ranger improvements, both to the Warden and to the Hunter. First of all, Hindering Strike. The cooldown between charges will now just be 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds, so be able to cast those off much quicker. Marauder's Escape. The damage is properly tagged as ranged. The Reign of Hours encounter just got a 15 magnitude buff per hit. Plant Growth, unfortunately, will no longer generate action points based on per target hit. It'll just be once. And then your Seismic Shot daily power did get a bit of a magnitude increase, and the projectile was reworked to try and eliminate issues where it was getting stuck in the ground. It will no longer slightly move the player. Forest Ghost daily, the magnitude has been increased to 250 times 4 hits instead of just 100. An Aspect of the Serpent will now specify that the damage bonus only applies to at-wills and encounter powers. So those are just some improvements to the base abilities of Ranger as a whole there. But we go to Hunter specifically, and we have the Hunter's Teamwork at will. So the supply caches were revised to try and eliminate issues where they were being unobtainable, and otherwise the Careful Attack at will has been tagged as melee. But then we jump into a lot of Warden updates. So they've had a fighting style mastery mechanic added, which will just increase Rapid Shot and Rapid Strike, the amount of damage that those at-wills will deal. Again, just on Warden specifically. Now the Electric Shot at-will just got a 20 magnitude increase. Clear the Ground, 10 magnitude increase. Penetrating Arrow, 20 magnitude increase. Storm Strike at-will, a 20 magnitude increase. Binding Arrow encounter power gone up to 1000 magnitude, with the weak Grasping Roots changed to strong Grasping Roots, making it a pretty high damaging attack. Might help with a ranged only Warden build. And then Throw Caution got a 100 magnitude increase, will now properly generate action points and be tagged as melee. Split the Sky encounter powers has got an increase of 25 magnitude per hit, and the Fox Shift encounter power also got a pretty big magnitude increase of 150 per hit, but still it's pretty clunky to cast. Then we jump to some additional changes where Thorn Ward encounter power got increased by 50 magnitude per hit. Thorn Strike encounter power, the cooldown has been increased, but the magnitude has gone up to 500. Then the Cold Steel Hurricane daily power, magnitude gone up by 300, and they reworked the projectile a little bit to eliminate it getting stuck on the ground. Then the Call of the Storm daily power, just the initial magnitude has gone down to just 400, but the damage per hit has gone from 40 to 100. And the Blade Storm feature, the damage increase has gone from 10% to 20%. Then the Aspect of the Lone Wolf will now provide 5% accuracy all the time, and just give you then the deflect based on the number of enemies. Then the Deft Strike feat has been reworked so that now it will give you an increase to your melee or range damage for 3 seconds rather than say on the next power. And this bonus is gone up to 30%. So this means you can play stance switching and gain a 30% damage for that's just 3 seconds on all of those abilities, meaning you could use a ranged ability, then switch to melee, use say 2 melee abilities, switch back to ranged, so on and so forth, increasing the effectiveness of all those abilities during those durations. The problem I find with that is things like Thorn Ward and Split the Sky are big damage over time abilities. They take like 10 seconds to output all their damage, and since their damage is based on your current buffs and stats, you might not have this buff for those abilities, and so this doesn't really become very effective with regards to those. I will have to do some more testing and find out, yeah, the best setup for Warden, especially around deft strikes if you wanted to do that. But that is ultimately everything for the Warden updates. We're on about wave 3, I believe now, and hopefully this will put it into a lot better shape. So hopefully this has all been somewhat insightful. Again, Vecna's been nerfed. You probably shouldn't use it anymore. Some nice rogue buffs coming, but also a pretty heavy nerf to the Assassin and Toxic Blades. I mean, that's just a fix, and it was somewhat overperforming, particularly in multi-target and hybrid content. And then buffs to Ranger, affecting both Hunter and Warden. With that said, a massive thank you to all of these channel members for your added support, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.